All right. And so, back at it. Hey, I'm Tori B. This is either gonna be part two or part three, because I don't know if I'm gonna split the first video or if I'm gonna just let it roll, right? I don't want the videos too long. I want to try to keep it short, but it is what it is, right? Anyway, so I decided, um, and if you didn't catch the tail end of the last video, I was talking about how um after all of the different changes or experiences or whatever, I um started doing music. I was already writing. Now, one of the things I used to do with the writing is when I was younger, maybe ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, whenever I was going through emotional things, I used to write it out. And so I've always had a habit of writing my feelings. And then writing eventually turned into writing poetry. And so I had already had developed the skill of writing and different poetry styles, the styles of poetry that I was learning. I was writing in those different styles, trying them out and reading them out loud and all that stuff, right? But anyway, so I decided, okay, I'm gonna pick up a career as a music artist. So now, mind you, I still was working. I just started working on doing music. I eventually met a young lady who became my manager. So I was working and doing music. Now I'm like, okay, the fact that I had a manager, I'm like, this could actually work out. Now I'm working, I got my two kids, and I picked up this extra responsibility, but still trying to make it work. Now, even in the midst of this, the relationship that I was in was toxic. I wasn't in a relationship with him, but even the fact that we had to try to co-parent together was toxic. Now, I'm trying to do all the best that I can. The support that I was getting from my aunt, who I originally moved down here with, she actually withdrew her support by the time I had my second daughter. And rightfully so. I I've never was upset with her about it. Um because for the most part, she didn't have a kid with me. I had a kid with, the barber. And so even before he and I separated, and I went through the shelter and everything, and we went through like this separation phase. But because of the fact that I had child number two and I didn't want to raise my kids without a father, I called myself, okay, let me try to make our relationship work. Right. So he eventually, um, we kind of, he stayed in his own place for a little bit while I stayed in my place, but eventually he moved in, right? Now, mind you, I have housing. We know he ain't supposed to be there. And so, anyway, he eventually moved in. Um, but because the relationship was toxic, he eventually moved out. The relationship didn't last too long. So, we eventually broke up for good. And I feel like part of me not wanting to, I guess, try to make the relationship work anymore. It was almost as if he wanted to punish me for not wanting the relationship to work. So trying to take care of my two kids alone now became a little bit harder. But because of the fact that I did have the housing and because of the fact that I did have the food stamps, it did make things a little bit easier. So I was still working just financially. So this is how the government assistance. If you make under a certain amount of money with a specific family size, you either qualify or you don't qualify. So for instance, I ended up getting a job at the Boston Globe, right? So I ended up getting another job. This time was a little bit different. My job was different. It wasn't necessarily customer service, but it was more like assembly line work, right? Anyway, I think I was making. I don't know. I think when I started off there, I was making like maybe 10, $12 an hour. I think $12 an hour. So, and I was working, it wasn't like 40 hours a week. I think I was working like 30 hours a week or something. So this is how it works. If you have a family size of, at the time it was three, it was me, my two daughters. So that's family size three. They calculated how much the average cost of living is for a family size of four. I don't remember what it was at the time, but I'm gonna just give you general numbers just to give y'all an idea of how they calculate if you qualify or not, right? Family size of three. Me, my two daughters. Let's say the guidelines is if you make more than if you make more than I'm gonna say 30,000. I'm just giving I don't know if this is accurate right now. If you make more than 30,000 a year with a family size of three, you don't qualify for the assistance, right? But if you have a family size of three, while you're working, if you make less than 30,000, then you qualify. So this is how you can have a job and still be on assistance because with what they gauge the cost of living for that actual family size, it determines if you approve or denied for the assistance or not. And so apparently the job that I had was under the family size requirement because I was able to work and still get the assistance with the family size that I have, right? Now, mind you, for every child that's on the, or every number of kids that's on the list, that number changes. So, for instance, my family size did grow to four. It was me and then me and my three daughters, right? Now, for the family size of four, you can't have an income more than 40,000. So let's say now mind you, it was 30,000 before, but now it's 40,000 because the average cost of living per year for a family size of four, I'm just gonna say 40,000. So if you make less than 40,000 a year, then you qualify to receive government assistance even if you're working, right? So it all worked, right? Until I mean, it just got to a point where I wanted so hard just to find a career. So in the middle of all this, um, because of the fact that I was doing music, I had a manager, I was starting to do shows. I wasn't spending, hours in the studio. I haven't had my third daughter yet. I only gave y'all the example of the three daughters was to let y'all know the different tiers that they have for family size and the income limits and how what the average household expenses are, right? So, but at this time I only had the two kids still. So, like I said, I also didn't know that when I was aspiring to use my gift of singing, I didn't even think go to school for it. I thought talent was found by natural talent. I just thought that if you're in the right place at the right time, you meet the right people and it happens. Like I thought as long as you put your face everywhere, as long as you get your information everywhere, long the more people see you, the more, chance you got at like making it pop. Like that's what I thought. No one told me the truth, okay? No one told me the truth. Anyway, so I started doing these. Was doing studio time. I was, recording. I was doing shows. I was still working my job, and my whole point was I wanted to, pursue this career because I thought if I make something out of it that I won't have to work a regular job anymore. I'll be able to, afford the cost of living. At least that's what I thought, right? So I ended up putting all this energy, this effort, this money, this, kind of creating this alter ego, so to speak. Because when you gotta perform, you gotta have a persona, right? And so I did all this. Now, mind you, still trying to navigate being a single mom and navigate not really having the support from my second daughter's father. Now, my oldest daughter's father's side of the family, they were very supportive, but because of the fact that I live in another state, they were only supportive to a certain limit. Like for instance, during the summers, Same as when I was a kid during the summers, they always came and got her for the whole summer. So whenever the summers came, I kind of, you know, I had my summers free until my second daughter came along. Now, even with my oldest daughter, her family was supportive during certain holidays and stuff like that. They always sent my daughter money. So they always sent stuff. They always sent her clothes. If they didn't send her money, they always sent her stuff. So when it came to my oldest daughter, I had a little bit of support there. But when it came to my second daughter, um, it was like all on me. It was all on me. And so I'm like navigating life. I am I am trying to do it all. Okay. I'm still trying to be me. The weight of the world hadn't really set on me yet. So I was still very much enthused. I was still very much uh had faith in my abilities. And like I said, the weight of the world hadn't hit me yet. So I was doing it all. I thought I was being a good mother. I was juggling, okay? I was juggling like plates, juggling it all, right? And doing it all with a smile. And so eventually another shift happened. So there was some bad tension that ended up happening at the job that I worked at the Globe. Now, I held that job for a long time. I think I was at that job for like 8 years. I worked morning shift, I worked night shift. That job, I had that job when I was also in the shelter. That's the job that I was able to have nights out when I was in the shelter because of the work schedule that I had. I had clout at that job. My work ethic is so good that everybody that I referred to that job got hired. If you knew me and if you needed a job, all I had to do was say, "Hey, I got somebody need a job." They would hire them. That's how good my work ethic was. My work ethic was so good that whenever I referred people, they never even questioned or interviewed them. They hired them right on the spot. So I think I pulled like 5, 6 people in that job in my lifetime. Out of my time being there, right? Because my goal was always to have my own. My goal was all since the beginning. Since I got on the assistance, my goal was to have my own. So some hard times happened. Before I fully quit that job, I took a leave of absence. There was some high tension at that job. There was some really high beef that had happened between a family member. And because of that, because I'm from Detroit and I'm bowdy, well, but I used to be real pop offish, okay? I used to be, you talk about fight. I've been fighting all my life. In a fight, I'm a fighter. I'll just say it like that, right? I was at this point where I was like, I was trying to change from that though, because I have kids now. If I fight somebody and I'm a single parent, if I fight somebody, that means if I go to jail, who gonna take care of my kids? So I had to start learning how to bite my tongue, make sure that I'm available for my children. And that means even if I had to bite my tongue or even if I had to take a leave of absence from work so that I don't fight people, that's what I did, right? So I ended up taking a leave of absence, hoping that in the time that I took the leave of absence, that I will be able to find a job. And I also took the leave of absence because if I don't find a job in that time that I was, on absence, I had a job I can go back to, right? So I took a leave of absence. That leave of absence lasted for 8 months. 8 months. I didn't want to go back to the job because the high tension, because of the beef that was happening at that job with some family members that I had got hired in. And I just knew I know how I am or how I was. And I didn't want to lose my job that way. I had gained way too much respect and credibility there to go out by fighting, to go out by not being able to manage my anger, right? So I decided I don't want to go back, but because of the fact that I have the absence, I know I can, right? Because I didn't fully just quit. I spent 8 months trying to find a job. 8 months. I filled out an application every day. And then there was just some jobs I didn't want to work. There were some jobs that I was willing to work, but there were some jobs I didn't want to work. I tell you, in this space, my target job was concierge. I wanted to be a concierge at a hotel. Now, every time I applied for this job, no one ever said you have to have so many amount of years of experience in this. Nobody ever said you have to have this on that. Even when I looked up the job titles, it didn't say that, you have to have certain I mean, of course, it had a job description, but it never said anything like, in order to be a concierge, you have to have made it past entry level. Anyway, I wanted to be a concierge, right? And so I was like, okay, if none of these jobs are available, then let me see what's available. So I looked at what was available. I didn't want to work at McDonald's. I was like, nope, don't want to work at fast food. I did that when I was 16. I mean, at this point, I think I was in like my mid 20s. Anyway, but the thing is, if it was the only job available, probably would have did it. Let's just say because of the fact that I was on government assistance, food stamps or whatever. Eventually, because of the fact that I was on this leave of absence and I wasn't working, I eventually applied for cash benefits. And with that, whenever you apply for cash benefits, they always ask you to join some kind of like work search program. And so I did that. I did that because I was actually looking for a job. And so with the work search program, they had these volunteers that were there that help you build a resume. They help you use more professional lingo in your resume versus just saying I have experience at this place or I have experience at that place. They give you anyway. So did all that. Build a professional resume, was filling out applications everywhere. Still 8 months without a job. And it ain't like I wasn't looking. That's my whole point. It ain't like I was just sitting at home just collecting food stamps and eating snacks. I actually was searching every day, right? So I just said skip it. This is taking too long. It has been almost a year. The money that I get for government assistance, I think I was getting $200 a month. Decided, okay, whatever, I'm gonna go back to work. So I go back to work. I decided to work the night shift because I figured, okay, the girls that I had beef with work during the day. Instead of me just doing night hours whenever somebody called off, I was gonna make night hours my permanent thing. That way I'm not near these girls so that I don't end up getting into a fight because I like this job too much to lose respect that way. I just didn't want to lose the respect that way. And so what ended up happening was I ended up going back to nights. Um, I probably was working 30 hours, maybe 40. I don't know just yet. Whatever it was, my income still didn't exceed the family size cap, right? I'm going to call it a cap. It's not called a cap, or limit. It's called limit. Family size limit. My income still didn't exceed the family size limit. So I was able to still work, still get the food stamps or whatever, because for my family size, my income wasn't high enough. But mind you, I'm still going to the studio. I'm still recording songs. I'm still writing songs because I really want to be off this. And I just want to figure out how. It didn't even cross my mind to try to go back to school because I had already went to school for cosmetology. So I never even tried to go back to school for acting because I eventually wanted a hair salon. But I thought I'm gonna take a different route because I didn't get a chance to build a clientele. The first couple experiences that I had at the hair salon wasn't so great. And so I thought, okay, if I could at least if things blow up with my music, with the skill and the talent that I have, once I start to make decent money, I'll still buy me a hair salon. I'll just own the hair salon instead of working at it, right? At least that was my mindset. And so things just didn't work out that way. So just to keep it moving forward, I was doing a lot of networking. I was doing a lot of collaborations. I was meeting other local artists. I was doing shows. It was like things seemed like it was I had a really good flow. My name was starting to be known around the city. So I was becoming like a local artist there. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. But one of the things I didn't know that come along with trying to become a local artist is that it come with silent or secret hate until people start to show their true colors. But when you around and you doing shows and you inviting people, you thinking people like you and they got your back, and then you start, it's just a lot. Life is just a lot. Okay? Life is just a lot. But in my mind, the back of my mind, through everything that I have, I'm just trying to figure out how to get off of this assistance. It's called transitional assistance in the state that I was living in. It's called Department of Transitional Assistance. So I always looked at it as such. I always looked at it, okay, I just need to be able to get to a certain place in life and I won't have to look back. That's what I thought. but it's not that simple. So anyway, I ended up leaving that. I ended up I ended up working at nights for probably like maybe a year, a little over a year. And then someone from the day shift that was a part of the group of girls that I wanted to stay away from, she ended up coming to the night. And the very thing that I didn't want to happen ended up happening. I ended up getting into a fight with the girl because I told y'all I'm about it. Anyway, I tried to avoid it for so long. Man, y'all just don't understand the like level of hostility that I was really trying to hold back and had been holding back for even before I came back to try to avoid it. Anyway, that girl, she got the beat down for everybody that I wanted to fight. Anyway, after I fought that girl, I just never even went back to the job because I was like, if I go back to work, they gonna call the police on me. I didn't want to go to jail. Where I'm from, you win some, you lose some. When I my last year of high school, I did in Massachusetts. I saw somebody get to a fight. They got the police called on them. I said, no, not I. They will not call the police on me. So I avoided fights for many years, but that girl, she got it that day. So here I am again, out of work, right? Out of work again. Now I already knew last time it took me 8 months to find a job. So this time I decided, okay, let me try to do things a little bit differently. So I had started calling around people that I knew, family members that I knew. Hey, I'm out of work. If your boss is hiring, please put in a word. And so I asked my cousin, I said, hey, just out of conversation, me and her was talking. I said, hey, this is what, happened with my job. This is what's going on. If you know anybody, who may have a job or who job may be hiring or whatever, like let me know. And so my cousin did. The girlfriend he had at the time, was working at this uh college. She was working for a food service company in the college district. And so she came and she was like, hey, she said, I can pull you in. I got plug, at my job or whatever. And so she was like, just fill out an application and I'm gonna tell them X, Y, and Z. And she was like, you'll be hired. And I did. I got hired. So thank goodness, there be rams in the bush in life. So I ended up working as a cashier at a college. Um, and it's a third party company that services almost all the colleges in the college area in Massachusetts. And so I ended up working at Wentworth for a little while, and then I ended up working at Mass Art for a little while. I worked there for so long, and just like I said, I started off as a cashier. By the time I left that place, I was supervisor, and I was actually lead supervisor. So I had three positions. I started off as a supervisor. Well, technically four, because I ended up being a floater. Because once I started off as a cashier, and then after cashier, I ended up just doing like covers, like covering everybody whenever they needed breaks and all that. Like I started learning how to work all the stations in the place. So, and that's because I wanted to become a manager. And so I kept telling my managers and stuff like that. I was like, hey, any positions come up, any supervisors, any assistant manager. I'm like, holla at your girl. Teach me what I need to know so I can fit the role, right? I kept every time I spoke to my boss or something like that, that's what I would tell them. Like, I want to make it up to management. What I gotta do, okay? So anyway, that's what I did though. So I made my way from cashier to floater, from floater to supervisor, from supervisor to lead supervisor. And right before I left, I was actually looking at potential to be assistant director. And that's because by the time there was like a management switch, a woman ended up filling the director position at Mass Art. So I got transferred to Mass Art to be with her because she was new and they wanted to fill the position. Anyway, so because me and her had became so tight, they was gonna offer me the assistant director position. Longer story short, by the time it all came to an end, they ended up giving somebody else the assistant director position. But I still was lead supervisor, technically manager of the coffee station that we had, but because they didn't give me all of the I want to say authority to some of the things that I would need to run it as a manager, they decided to give me the title lead supervisor. Anyway, I said all that to say I spent a lifetime of trying to navigate life and trying to find ways to become more independent so that I can get off of the assistance, so that I can take care of myself and my family. Now, let me say this. When I made it to supervisor position and when I made it to lead supervisor position, I had finally exceeded the family size limit. I was making $15 an hour, but because I was working 50, 60 hour shifts per week, and any hours that I made over 40 was time and a half. And I was doing a consistent almost 50, 60 hours. I had exceeded the income limit for my family size. And so the food stamps got cut off, and I had to start paying a certain portion for rent now. And so my rent portion jumped up to about, I think I was paying like 900. Now, mind you, I told you in Massachusetts rent is higher. So I had a 2 bedroom voucher, and the rent for like a 2 bedroom voucher was like, I want to say like anywhere between 15 to 1800 because of all the hours that I was working, because of all the money that I was making. Mind you, I said any hours over 40 is time and a half. So I was making $15 an hour for the first 40 hours that I worked. And then for the other 20 hours that I was working, I was making like $27 an hour. So altogether, I was making a decent check. Plus I was getting paid every 2 weeks. So when I got my checks every 2 weeks, it was a little fat. It was a little fat. Anyway, so I exceeded the income limit. So now because of the fact that I have housing, and because of the fact that I exceeded the income size for the food stamps, so now I no longer qualify for the food stamps, so I'm not receiving it. I still get healthcare. Um, what's the other thing? I think just healthcare. So now I'm paying cash out of pocket for food, and my rent is now like $900. Now I was paying majority. The I think my rent at the time was like it was anywhere between like 1,500 and 1,800. I'm paying like I'm paying $900 a month plus I'm paying for food. Now, although this put a hindrance and a damper in what I was initially trying to do. Now, what I was initially trying to do when I started working all these hours was I was trying to save money so that I could get off of assistance and get my own. I wanted to buy my own house. I wanted to, I had a lot of plans. I had a lot of plans of what I wanted to do. Like I said, I eventually wanted to own my own hair salon. I wanted to, so it was just a lot. And so, because of the fact that with my income change, my rent change, because of the fact that my rent changed, now instead of me being able to take $900 and save it, I had to put $900 towards the rent. Mind you, housing is still paying the other half, and I am now paying cash out of pocket for food. Now, I was okay and I was content with it because I was still hoping, whatever genre that I was choosing to be in would take off. And at the time, it was music. Um, so I was singing, I was rapping, I was doing shows, I was like, paying babysitters and paying for studio time and, trying to, keep up with the rent and everything. Everything was going, everything was going, everything was going. It was good. I mean, life happens, drama happens, you get fights and bickers with relatives and friends and all of this stuff. Some things is good, some things is not, some things happen, some things you learn from, some things you don't, whatever, right? So life is just life, right? And how am I going to save? The assistance that I'm on is called the Department of Transitional Assistance. But how can I transition if by the time I'm done splitting the money up, I don't have none I can save, right? So, of course, I had to start doing process of elimination. Now I got to start eliminating some bills so that I can have more money to kind of do or contribute to what the end goal is. But it was just difficult to save money because now I'm paying $900. And this is the thing, they want you to transition off of assistance, but the more money you make, the more of the rent they want you to pay, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that because if that's what they say I can afford, then that's what I'm willing to give. But are we really trying to help people get off of the government assistance, or are we trying to keep us on? Because that's what I started feeling like. I was like, I'm paying $900, which this is how they do it. They take your rent, what you make, they take your family size, they they average out what your average family size takes to spend for the year. They take what you actually make, they take your rent, your income, and they divide it up by the year. They also include your household size, and then they pretty much say, okay, this is what we feel like you could afford according to your family size. This is how much we're going to charge you for rent. And all the factors play in. Like if you live in a house and no utilities are included, they they account that. So if they feel like the average cost for utilities, depending on what you got to pay, if you got to pay light bill, gas bill, all that, they say, okay, we're not gonna include $200. We're gonna exclude $200 from what you owe, since more than likely utilities will cost $200. So they say, okay, since you have to pay this, we're gonna make the rent $200 cheaper because you need $200 to go to the utilities, right? That's how it works, right? But then if utilities are included, they give you the $200 to cover the rent that is included because it's all in one thing, right? Anyway, this is how I started figuring this out though. Like I said, I had always been trying to get off. But then they tell you once your income change, you're supposed to let them know. And so okay, that's what I was doing. If my income changed, I let them know. Soon as my income changed, my income go up. I said, okay. Now mind you, I was still trying to pay off my student loan, but now I can't pay off my student loan because my rent's $900. I still got my kids to pay for. I still got this to pay for. I still got babysitters to pay for. I still got goals that I'm trying to achieve, that I'm trying to put money towards. Like, it was just a lot. It was a lot. And so, okay, mind you, I'm telling y'all all this. I'm a good, probably 8 years in this story by now. I'm 8 years in, trying to get off of assistance. 8 years in, trying to get off of assistance. Okay. It was just a lot going on, right? So now I'm like, dang. Now I'm thinking, okay, if I really if I really wanted to try to get off and make things happen and save and all of this, it's not easy as I thought it was gonna be. So then I stumbled across building credit. Now mind you, I knew nothing about credit. The only reason why I found out about building credit while being on housing assistance was because I was trying to move. One of the apartments that I had moved to had became infested with roaches. Okay. When I first moved there was not a roach in sight, and then after some time there, it was disgusting. And so I was so desperately trying to move. Now, mind you, around like 2008 or something, there was supposedly like some kind of housing market crash. And so when it came to having housing and trying to move, it was a bad taste in a lot of landlords' mouths. So a lot of people they didn't want to accept people who had housing. And so it became this excruciating, just really painful experience, the fact that I could not move because everyone had become so hard on people who had housing that they made the requirements extreme. I was seeing stuff like, in order to move here, you have to make 3 times the rent. In order to move here, you have to have a credit score of 700 or 750. In order to move here, you have to have $3,000 for a down payment. In order to move here, you need to pay first, last, and security and finder's fee. In Massachusetts, that's like $5,000. If I had $5,000, I would buy a house. Mind you, okay, so now I'm trying to I'm telling these people, like, okay, well, I got housing. I don't make 3 times the rent, but they paid my portion or whatever I can't pay. This is the portion that I pay according to what I make. I'm like trying to negotiate with these people, and Nothing. Okay. I spent, actually, I was going to say 2, 3 years. It was so bad that the first place I lived in, my landlord was really, really cool. I think I lived with him for about 8 years. And eventually he sold the condo that I was staying in. And when he sold the condo, the new owner wanted the condo empty. And so my landlord had gave me the heads up. He gave me like over a year's time to kind of be like, hey, you need to start looking for somewhere to stay, right? And he told me, if you don't find nowhere to stay, he said I do have other units, but because of all of his units were filled, he was just like, anyway, I couldn't find nowhere to go. I was trying to move out, and it was so much making it harder for me to go. And then to make another thing to add on top of this, because of the fact that I had kids under the age of 6, now, when I go do my housing search, I have to make sure that I have a unit that has been deletted, and they have to have a certificate, and they have to show and prove it to housing that has been deletted that I can move in. Then you have to have an inspection. The inspections only happens on certain times of the day. You have to call, they have to schedule the time. You can't even just move, get to a place, get on the money and move right in. You got to schedule, you got to wait for housing to come and approve everything. And if they don't approve it, if they feel like the rent's too high, you can't get it. It's like it's so much that goes into it, and it was so difficult. And so I really wanted to move to an apartment that had a washer and dryer because of my family size, and because of all that I had that I was juggling with life, I didn't want to keep going to the laundromat. Going to the laundromat was actually difficult for me, to the point where with such a busy schedule that I have, I was going to the laundromat frequently because instead of me washing the whole household of clothes, I was only washing like 2, 3 weeks worth of clothes for us, right, at a time, instead of washing everything at once. Anyway, so I was looking for an apartment complex that accepts housing, that accepts Section 8 voucher holders, that also had a washer and dryer in it. Most of those places, when I looked at those places, they was like, you gotta have a credit score of 700. First of all, what? I was like, what's a credit score? Didn't even know what it was. So I started learning about it, started learning about credit scores, started learning about, I learned through Credit Karma, a lot of stuff I learned through Credit Karma. I learned that when you're building credit, that, if you utilize credit, that you don't go over, if you don't, what credit companies look at as good as when you don't use more than 30% of your credit card. Then I learned that, if you pay it back, that if you pay it back like before the due date or whatever, that they increase your credit limit. So mind you, it was my experiences that taught me all these things. Mind you, I was learning so much literally within a year's time, maybe two. I ended up changing my credit score. I think when I first learned about credit score and I started looking into all of it, I think I had a credit score of like, it was either like 600 or something like that, 600 or something like that. It was maybe between like 540 something and 600. And so I started learning all the things. Don't apply for this, because if you apply for this type of credit card, it'll give you a hard inquiry, and anything that give you a hard inquiry, it knocks points off. If you do soft inquiry, it only knocks a few points off, and it lasts less than a hard inquiry. A hard inquiry lasts 3 years. A soft inquiry lasts like 6 to 8 months or something like that. So I'm learning all of this stuff, and I'm learning how to build. And then I learned this one thing, that if you if you have someone put you on their account as an authorized user, someone who have a high credit score of 800 and above, if you get on their account as an authorized user, their credit history reflects on your name, which boosts your credit score up, which gives you more like approval odds, right? So, word, okay? I'm like in there, about to get this credit score up so I can move, right? So instantly, man, like within a month or so. Like I said, it was a year's time because I had a couple of other debts that were on my credit report that I had to pay off. That, like I said, I never really paid it. I didn't know what the credit score thing was. So I did have a few things that was on my credit report that I wasn't aware was on there because I didn't know nothing about credit. So there was still some things that I did have to pay off. There were some things that I had to have written off. I went to there was some things on there that I was like, I'm not paying that. Like old phones and stuff like that. So I ended up going to a credit repair company. They charged me a couple of dollars and was like, all right, we're gonna reach out to them and have it remove it. So I learned a lot along this way, right? So actually, what I'll do is I'll end this one here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and create a part three. It's probably gonna be like a part six. I don't know. We'll see.